Welcome to Does It Matter by Brainy Ballers, where we dissect the game with cutting-edge analytics to give you the upper hand. We analyze everything from hand sizes to average depth of targets to uncover hidden trends that no one else sees. Say goodbye to guesswork and hello to data-driven domination. Because here at Brainy Ballers, we don't just watch the game, we understand it. So get ready, it's podcast time.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Hey there.
Today, we're jumping into a really interesting question, one you hear debated all the time.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
Does a quarterback's weight actually matter, for fantasy football success?
The weight debate.
Right.
Big guy, small guy, does it make a difference in the points?
Exactly. And we've got some pretty solid source material here. It's an analysis looking at the top 30 fantasy QBs each season.
Okay.
Going all the way back to 2003. So quite a bit of data.
That's a good chunk of history.
Yeah, so our mission basically is to unpack these numbers together. See if weight is something you should even, factor in.
Okay, let's do it. So where does the analysis start? Does it just, compare the heavy guys to the light guys?
Well, that was the first look, yeah. Comparing the averages.
Right.
You take the top 5 fantasy finishers each year.
The studs.
And compare their average weight to the guys finishing 26th through 30th. The bottom end of that top 30 group.
Okay, the extremes. And what did that show? Anything obvious?
Honestly, no noticeable trend.
Really? So the heaviest guys weren't always dominating, and the lightest weren't always at the bottom.
Exactly. Just looking at those average weights at the top versus the bottom didn't really reveal anything clear about fantasy points.
So much for the simple answer then.
Right. No easy heavier is better or vice versa. But digging a bit deeper, the analysis did find something interesting.
Okay. Like what?
It seemed to point towards a potential optimal weight range.
An optimal range. Based on the data.
Yeah, specifically quarterbacks weighing between 221 and 226 pounds.
221 to 226. That's a pretty narrow window.
It is.
And what was special about that group? Did they score more points?
Well, not necessarily more points overall in a predictive way, but looking back since 2003, QBs in that specific 221, 226 range, they had a slightly higher rate of finishing in the fantasy top 5.
A higher rate. How much higher?
About 4% higher compared to the guys finishing in the bottom 10 fantasy spots, so 21st to 30th.
Okay, 4%.
Uh,
That's something. It's not huge, but it's a difference noted in the data for that specific slice.
Right. It's a curious little observation when you slice the data that way. But does it mean weight really matters just in that specific zone?
But that's where you got to look at the bigger statistical picture, right?
Exactly. What do the overall correlations say?
So the analysis ran the numbers across all the data, looking for a direct link between weight and fantasy points scored using the Pearson correlation.
And the result?
Do you want to start dominating your drafts? At BrainyBallers.com, we've researched every metric under the sun for you to find which ones are best linked to fantasy points. You can access hundreds of metrics to sharpen your scouting ability so you know which metrics matter and which are just noise. Stop guessing on which thresholds to look for within each metric. Big numbers can be misleading or irrelevant. Our Ultimate Athlete Blueprints reveal essential scouting metrics, their importance and benchmarks within each metric that help predict a player's probability of being a success or bust. Elevate your scouting ability with Brainy Ballers' Ultimate Athlete Blueprints today. Click the link in the description. Now back to the show.
Minus 0.01.
Minus 0.01. Wow. Okay, so for anyone not deep into stats, that's basically 0, isn't it?
It's incredibly close to 0. It signifies pretty much no meaningful linear relationship. Knowing a QB's weight based on this number tells you almost nothing predictable about his fantasy score.
Right. Like if you compare that to something people do consider important, like a running back's draft capital.
Yeah, how high they were picked in the draft.
Right. That had a Pearson value of negative 0.234.
Which indicates a relationship. Minus 0.01 for QB weight. That's statistically insignificant in comparison.
So that near zero correlation is really the main takeaway from the statistics, overriding that small bump in the 221, 226 range.
Pretty much. The overall lack of correlation is the loudest signal here. You can maybe theorize why 221, 226 might be good durability, strength, blend, whatever, but the hard data doesn't strongly back weight as a key fantasy predictor overall.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's boil this down. What does this actually mean for you, the listener, when you're scouting QBs or sitting in your draft?
Look, the clearest message from this deep dive is that, based on this data going back to 2003, quarterback weight seems like a very, very minor factor, if it's even a factor at all.
So minor, you can probably just ignore it.
Honestly, yes. The statistical link is so weak, you can understandably overlook it when making your decisions. Focus on other things.
But just playing devil's advocate, if you did want to consider it, maybe as a tiny tiebreaker.
Well, if you did, the data did show that 221 to 226 pound range had that slightly higher rate of top 5 finishes historically compared to the bottom group.
But, and this is key, that historical rate doesn't mean a guy in that range will be a top 5 QB, right? The overall correlation says it's not predictive.
Precisely. It's an observation about past distribution, not a strong predictive tool for individuals. The near-zero correlation is the headline.
Got it. So the main takeaway. This deep dive suggests QB weight, despite all the talk, doesn't really matter much for fantasy success based on nearly 2 decades of data.
That's what the numbers are saying.
Okay, so if weight is largely off the table as a significant factor, it leaves you with a thought, doesn't it?
Which is?
If weight isn't the hidden edge some might think it is, what other metrics, maybe ones we overlook, could actually give you a real advantage in predicting performance? Something to chew on.